The black mines of Kethvora went deep into the ground. They twisted and turned like the roots of a dead tree. The air was thick with dust that stuck to the skin and filled the lungs. Light came only from dim lamps that flickered against the stone walls dotting these mines. The Drakari worked. They were dragon people, tall and powerful, with scales that should have shone like jewels and wings that should have carried them across the sky. But that was long ago. Now their scales were dull and cracked. Their wings were cut short so they could not fly. Around their necks, they wore metal collars that could shock them with pain if they disobeyed. The Veliks had done this to them. The Veliks were insect creatures with hard shells and many eyes. They had come to the Drakari world with weapons and ships and soldiers. The war had lasted only a season. Now the Veliks owned everything. The land, the mines, the people. Sithara remembered the old days. She remembered flying with her mother above the mountains. She remembered the taste of fresh meat and the warmth of the sun on her scales. She remembered being free, but that was 20 cycles ago. Now she was just another worker, just another slave with a number instead of a name. She swung her pickaxe against the rock. Again and again. The voidstone they mined was valuable. It powered the ships of the hegemony, the great empire that ruled this part of the galaxy. The Veliks sold it for enormous prices. But the workers saw none of that money. Sithra's arms burned with tired muscles. Her back ached. Her stomach was empty. She had not eaten properly in 3 days, and neither had her children. Her children. That was what kept her going. Korath was her oldest, a young male with green scales like his father. Mira was her daughter, quiet and thoughtful, with eyes that saw too much. And little Fen was just a baby, barely old enough to walk. Their father was gone. He had tried to escape 2 cycles ago. The Veliks had caught him and made an example of him in front of everyone. Sithara still saw his face in her dreams. Now she was alone. Alone with 3 hungry children and a debt that grew larger every day. The debt. That was how the Veliks kept control. Every worker owed money. For the air they breathed. For the water they drank. For the space where they slept. For the tools they used. The numbers were designed to grow faster than anyone could pay. It was a trap with no escape. When the shift bell rang, Sithara put down her pickaxe. Her whole body hurt, but she forced herself to walk to the Overseer's station. She had to try. For her children, Overseer Vexinic sat behind a metal desk. He was large for a Velix, with a shell that gleamed under the lights. His many eyes moved constantly, watching everything at once. When he saw Sithara approach, his mouthparts clicked together. It was the Velix way of smiling. "Worker 739, he said. "What do you want?" Sithara kept her head down. Looking directly at a Velix was forbidden. "I only need my wages," she said. Her voice was soft and tired. "My children haven't eaten. Please. I have worked every shift. I have met every quota. I just need what I have earned." Vexinic's clicking sound grew louder. "Wages? You still owe for last month's oxygen fees. And your youngest required a medical scan. Did you think that was free?" "I never asked for a medical scan," Sithara said. "It is mandatory. For your own safety." His voice was smooth and cold. "Perhaps if you work double shifts, you can begin to pay your debt. In a year or 2, maybe you will see some credits." Sithara felt something hot rise in her chest. The fire. All Drakari had fire inside them. It was their birthright, their power. But the collar around her neck would punish any attempt to use it. She had seen workers burned from the inside by their own collars when they tried to fight back Dodd, so she swallowed her fire. She swallowed her pride. She turned away from the overseer with tears building in her eyes. That was when she saw the stranger. He stood near the mine entrance, watching the workers file past. He was small, much smaller than a Drakari and shorter than a Velix too. His skin was a warm brown color, like the earth of her homeland. His hair was cut very short. He wore simple gray clothes with a patch on his shoulder that she did not recognize. A human. She had heard of them. A new species from the far edge of the galaxy. The Velix said they were primitive, weak, not worth bothering with, but this human was looking at her. Not through her, the way the Velix looked at workers. At her. Like she was a person. Their eyes met for just a moment. Sithara saw something in his face that she could not name. Was it anger? Sadness? Understanding? Then the human turned and walked away. Just another visitor to the mines. Just another alien who would see the suffering and do nothing about it. Sithara made her way back to the worker barracks. It was a large room filled with thin sleeping mats. Hundreds of Drakari lived here, packed together like animals. The air smelled of sickness and despair. Her children were waiting for her in their small corner. Korath tried to look brave, but she could see the hunger in his eyes. Mira sat quietly, holding baby Then in her thin arms. The baby did not cry anymore. He had learned that crying brought nothing. "Mother," Korath said, "did they give you the wages?" Sithara shook her head. She could not speak. If she opened her mouth, she would start crying, and she could not let her children see her cry. She gathered them close to her. They were so small, so thin. She could feel their bones through their scales. "Tomorrow," she said. "We will try again tomorrow." It was a lie. She knew it was a lie. Tomorrow would be the same as today. The same as yesterday. The same as every day since the Velix came. But what else could she tell them? In the darkness of the barracks, surrounded by other broken families, Sithara held her children and tried not to think about the human with the watching eyes. He was probably already gone. Back to his ship. Back to his own world. Why would anyone help a dragon mother with nothing to offer? She closed her eyes and dreamed of flying. Danny Cole could not sleep that night. He lay in his small cabin on the steady hand, staring at the metal ceiling. The ship hummed quietly around him. Outside the window, the stars burned cold and distant. But all he could see was the dragon mother's face. The desperation in her eyes. The way her voice had cracked when she begged for money she had already earned. He knew that look. He had seen it before. Danny grew up in Detroit, in the old parts of the city where the factories had closed long ago. His mother had worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. His father drank away whatever money came in, and sometimes used his fists when he ran out of bottles. Danny learned early that the world was not fair, that the people at the bottom got stepped on by the people at the top. His mother had worn that same look. That tired, desperate, beaten down look of someone who had given everything and still came up short. She died when Danny was 16. Heart attack, the doctors said. But Danny knew the truth. She had worked herself to death because no one had helped her when she needed it. He joined the Navy at 18. Served in places he was not allowed to talk about. Saw things that still woke him up at night. When humanity finally reached the stars, he signed up with the Commerce Fleet. The Steady Hand was his ship now. Small and old, but she got the job done. "You're thinking too loud," said a voice from the doorway. Linda Park leaned against a frame with her arms crossed. She was his co-pilot and his best friend. A small woman with sharp eyes and a tongue that could cut through steel. She had grown up on the moon colonies, breathing recycled air and learning to survive in tight spaces. "Can't help it," Danny said. "The dragons?" "Drakari. They're called Drakari." "Fine. The Drakari." Linda walked in and sat on the edge of his bunk. "Look, I saw what you saw. It's awful. The whole system here is rotten. But it's not our problem, Danny. We're here to trade, not to save the galaxy." "I know. Do you?" "Because you've got that look. The same look you had before you punched that Corthan slaver on Station 9. Danny almost smiled. He deserved it. He had 3 meters of height and 4 arms. You spent a week in the medical bay. Still worth it. Linda sighed. What are you planning? Danny sat up. He had been thinking about this all night. The numbers kept running through his head. The mother's debt. His own savings. The risk of getting involved. I'm going back to the mines tomorrow, he said. Just to look around. Ask some questions. Danny, I'm not going to start a war, Linda. I just want to understand what we're dealing with. Linda was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Fine, but I'm coming with you. Someone has to keep you alive. The next morning, they presented their credentials at the mine entrance. The Velix guards looked at them with what might have been amusement. Humans were beneath their notice. Small. Weak. What harm could they possibly do? A Velix administrator gave them a tour. He spoke in smooth, practiced words about worker benefits and fair treatment and opportunity for advancement. Danny listened and said nothing. He had heard the same lies back on Earth, from factory owners and politicians who smiled while people starved out as they walked through the tunnels. Danny watched the workers. He saw how thin they were, how they flinched when the overseers walked by, how the children in the side passages had hollow eyes and bones that showed through their scales. He made notes on his tablet. Not obvious notes, just small observations that might be useful later. Then he saw her again, the dragon mother from yesterday. She was swinging a pickaxe at the rock wall, her movements slow and tired. Her scales were a faded blue-gray, like a sky covered in clouds. Danny waited until the administrator was distracted. Then he walked over to her. Ma'am, he said quietly, you're the one from yesterday. With the children. The dragon mother froze. She did not look at him. Speaking to outsiders without permission could bring punishment. But after a moment, she whispered back. Yes, how much do you owe? The real number. She told him. The amount was huge. More than Danny had earned in 10 years of cargo hauling. It was designed to be unpayable. A chain that would bind her forever. Danny felt something cold settle in his stomach. Not fear, anger. I want to help you, he said. The dragon mother finally looked at him. Her golden eyes were filled with confusion and something that might have been hope, quickly buried. Why? She asked. We have never met. I have nothing to offer you. Danny thought about his mother, about all the times she had needed help and received none, about the promise he had made to himself at her funeral. Someone should have helped my mom when she needed it, he said. No one did. Maybe I can make that right somehow. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small data chip. It contained everything he had. Every credit he had saved over 15 years of work. It was supposed to be his retirement. His future. Now it would be hers. This has enough to pay your debt, he said. And passage off-world for you and your kids. There's a human colony called New Haven. It's not fancy, but they don't ask questions. And they don't do slavery. The dragon mother stared at the chip like it might bite her. Her clawed hands trembled as she took it. The Velix won't allow this, she said. They will find a way to stop it. They always do. Danny smiled. It was not a nice smile. That's the thing about humans. We're stubborn. And we've got lawyers. Linda appeared at his side, holding a tablet filled with dense legal text. United Earth Commerce Regulations, she said. Section 47, subsection C. Any debt transaction involving human money has to go through Earth courts. The Hegemony signed that agreement when they started trading with us. I filed the paperwork an hour ago. What does that mean? The dragon mother asked. It means they can't touch you or your children until the case is resolved, Danny said. and our courts move very slowly when we want them to. Tears began to flow down the Dragon Mother's face. In Drakari, tears were made of something that looked like liquid gold. They dripped onto the stone floor and glittered in the dim light. "You don't know what you have done," she whispered. "I know exactly what I've done," Danny said. "I've made some enemies. Probably caused myself a lot of trouble." He shrugged. Wouldn't be the first time. He turned to leave, then stopped. "What's your name?" he asked. "Your real name, not the number they gave you." The Dragon Mother straightened her back. For just a moment, she looked like the warrior she had once been. "Sithara," she said. "My name is Sithara. Nice to meet you, Sithara. I'm Danny, and this is going to be the start of something interesting." He walked away before the overseers could notice. But he could feel Sithara's eyes on his back, and he knew, with a certainty that went beyond logic, that he had done the right thing. The cost did not matter. Some things were more important than money. The news spread through the mines like fire through dry grass. A human had paid a worker's debt. A human had used strange laws to protect the Drakari family. A human had looked at the Veliks and said, "No doubt at first." Nobody believed it. The workers had been beaten down for so long that hope felt like a dangerous thing. Hoping meant disappointment. Hoping meant pain. It was easier to accept the chains than to dream of freedom. But then they saw Sithara. She still worked in the mines. The legal case was not finished yet, and she could not leave until it was decided. But something about her was different. She walked with her head a little higher. Her eyes had a spark that had been missing for years. And most importantly, her children were eating. Danny had arranged for food to be delivered to them. Real food, not the thin soup and stale bread that the Veliks provided. Fresh meat and vegetables and fruits that the young ones had never tasted before. Little Fen started crying again. The other workers thought this was strange until Sithara explained. He was crying because he was happy. He had forgotten what happiness felt like. Overseer Vexnik was furious. He stormed into the human ship 3 days after the paperwork was filed, his many eyes burning with rage. "You have no right to interfere in our business," he shouted at Danny. "These workers belong to the company. Their debts are legal contracts." Danny sat calmly in his chair. Linda stood behind him with her arms crossed. They had expected this visit. "The contracts were signed under your laws," Danny said. "But the payment was made with human credits. That brings it under human jurisdiction. Section 47 of the Commerce Agreement. I don't care about your pathetic regulations. The hegemony does." Danny pulled up a document on his screen. "I've already contacted Earth's Trade Commission. They've contacted the Hegemony Council. Everyone is very interested in how debt is managed in this sector." Vexnik shell made a clicking sound. It was the Veliks' version of grinding teeth. "You are making a very big mistake, human. You are small and weak. We could crush your entire species if we wanted." "Maybe," Danny said. "But you'd have to explain why to your trading partners. Earth buys a lot of goods from the hegemony. So do our allies. That's a lot of money to lose over one mine." The overseer stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and left without another word. Linda let out a breath. "That could have gone worse." "It's not over," Danny said. "They'll try something. They always do." But days passed, and Vexnik did not act. The legal case moved slowly through human courts, just as Danny had planned. Lawyers on Earth studied the documents. They asked questions. They requested more information. Every delay bought more time for Sithara and her children. Other humans started to arrive. First came reporters looking for a story. Then came activists who cared about workers' rights. Then came more lawyers offering to help other Drakari file their own cases. The Veliks did not know how to handle this. They were used to dealing with problems through force. But you cannot shoot a legal document. You cannot torture a trade agreement. The humans had found a weapon that the Veliks did not understand. Stera found Danny one evening in the cargo bay of his ship. He was sitting alone, looking at old photographs on his tablet. "May I join you?" she asked. Danny nodded and made room for her. She was too large to fit comfortably in the human-sized space, but she folded her wings against her back and sat beside him. "My children wanted me to thank you again," she said. "Kara says he wants to be like you when he grows up. Myra wrote you a poem." And then she paused, and her voice grew soft. Then smiled today. I had almost forgotten what his smile looked like. Danny said nothing. He just kept looking at his photographs. "Those are your family?" Sithara asked. "My mom?" He turned the tablet so she could see. The picture showed a tired woman with kind eyes and gray hair. She was smiling, but it was a tired smile. The smile of someone who had given too much. "She died when I was young. Worked herself to death because nobody helped her. I am sorry." "Don't be. It was a long time ago." Danny put the tablet away. "But I made a promise at her funeral. I said that if I ever saw someone who needed help the way she did, I wouldn't look away. I wouldn't pretend it wasn't my problem." He shrugged. "Most of the time, I couldn't do much. Give some money here, some food there. Small things. But this time, I could actually make a difference." Sithara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The other Drakari are talking. They have seen what you did for me, and they are asking questions." "What kind of questions?" "They want to know if humans would help them too. If your laws could protect their families. If there is really hope." Her golden eyes met his. "They have not talked about hope in a very long time, Danny. You have given them something that was stolen from us generations ago." Danny felt uncomfortable. He had not meant to start a movement. He had just wanted to help one mother feed her children. "I'm not a hero," he said. "I'm just a cargo hauler who got angry. Sometimes that is all a hero is." Sithara reached out and touched his hand with her clawed fingers. "In our old stories, the greatest warriors were not the strongest or the fastest. They were the ones who saw suffering and refused to accept it. You are such a warrior, Danny Cole, whether you want to be or not." A loud alarm suddenly broke the silence. Linda's voice came over the ship's speaker. "Danny, we've got a problem. Velik security forces are heading toward the worker barracks. Lots of them." Danny was on his feet in an instant. "How many?" "At least 50. They're armed." Sithra's scales rippled with fear. "My children. They're in the barracks." They ran together through the corridors of the station. Danny's heart pounded in his chest. He had known the Veliks would try something. He had just hoped for more time. When they reached the barracks, a crowd had already gathered. Velik soldiers stood in a line, their weapons raised. Behind them, Overseer Vexnik watched with satisfaction in his many eyes. "What is the meaning of this?" Danny demanded. "A routine inspection," Vexnik said smoothly. "We have received reports of stolen property. We must search the worker quarters." "Stolen property? That's ridiculous." "Perhaps. But the search will happen regardless. Unless you have some legal document that says otherwise." Danny clenched his fists. The Veliks had found a way around the legal protections. They were not trying to collect Sithra's debt. They were just conducting a search. And during that search, anything could happen. Evidence could be planted. Workers could be hurt. Children could disappear. He looked at Sithara. Her eyes were wide with terror. Her children were inside those barracks. Danny took a deep breath. Then he stepped forward and stood directly in front of the soldiers. "You'll have to go through me first," he said. Vexnik laughed. "You? One small human against 50 armed soldiers? One small human with a video drone that's broadcasting this entire scene to every news network in human space. Danny smiled grimly. Go ahead. Make an example of me. Let's see how your trading partners react. The overseer's laughter died. His eyes flicked upward, searching for the drone. He found it hovering near the ceiling, its red recording light blinking steadily. For a long moment, nobody moved. The tension was thick enough to taste odd. Then Vexenic made a sharp gesture, and the soldiers lowered their weapons. This is not over, human, he hissed. No, Danny agreed. It's just beginning. The soldiers withdrew. The workers watched in stunned silence. And in the crowd, a small spark of something new began to grow. It felt like hope. And it was spreading. 1 year passed. Then 2. The legal case dragged on, just as Danny had planned. During that time, everything changed. More humans came to Kethvora. Some were lawyers who helped other Drakari file debt disputes. Some were journalists who told the galaxy what was happening in the mines. Some were just ordinary people who had heard the story and wanted to help. The steady hand became more than a cargo ship. It became a meeting place, a school, a symbol. Danny taught the workers about human law. Linda showed them how to document abuses and send reports to outside organizations. Other humans brought food, medicine, and something even more valuable, information. Knowledge is power, Danny told a group of Drakari one evening. The Veliks have controlled you by keeping you ignorant. They made you believe that you had no rights, that your situation was normal, that nothing could ever change. But none of that is true. Sithara translated his words for those who did not speak the common tongue. Her children sat at her feet, listening with wide eyes. Little Then was not so little anymore. He was walking and talking and laughing like a normal child. The hollow look in his eyes was gone. How do we fight them? Asked an old Drakari named Varth. He had been in the mines longer than anyone. His scales were almost white with age, and his wings were nothing but scars. We have no weapons, no ships, no soldiers. You don't need those things, Danny said. The strongest weapon in the galaxy is the truth. And the truth is on your side. He pulled up a holographic display showing the hegemony's trade network. Lines of commerce connected thousands of worlds. Money flowed along those lines like blood through veins. The hegemony looks powerful, Danny said. And it is. But it depends on trade to survive. Cut off the trade, and it starts to die. And what do they trade more than anything else? Voidstone, Sithara answered. From these mines. Exactly. You have more power than you realize. Without your labor, the Voidstone stops flowing. Without the Voidstone, the hegemony's ships don't fly. Without ships, their whole empire falls apart. The workers looked at each other. This was a new idea. They had always thought of themselves as powerless, as property, as tools to be used and discarded. But tools can choose not to work. You're talking about a strike, Varth said slowly. I'm talking about leverage, Danny replied. The Veliks need you more than you need them. They just don't want you to know it. The planning took months. It had to be done carefully, secretly. The Veliks had spies among the workers. Anyone caught organizing could be killed as an example, but the Drakari were patient. They had waited generations for this moment. They could wait a little longer. Sithara became one of the leaders. She was respected by the other workers. They had seen how she stood up to the overseers. They had seen how she protected her children. They trusted her. Are you afraid? Danny asked her one night. They were sitting on the observation deck, watching the stars turn slowly outside the window. Yes, she admitted. I am terrified. If this fails, my children will suffer. All of our children will suffer. We can still stop. Go back to the legal route. Wait for the courts to decide. Sithara shook her head. The courts will take years. Decades, maybe. How many more generations will grow up in chains while we wait for paperwork? She turned to face him. You taught us that we have power, that we don't have to accept what the Veliks tell us. Were those just words? No, I meant every one of them. Then trust us to use what you taught us. Her golden eyes gleamed in the starlight. My people were warriors once. We have fire in our blood. For too long, that fire has been sleeping. You helped wake it up. Now we must decide what to do with it. Danny smiled. You know, when I first came here, I just wanted to help one family. I never planned for any of this. The best plans are often the ones we never make. Sithara placed her clawed hand on his shoulder. You will be remembered, Danny Cole. Whatever happens next, you will be remembered. The signal came 3 months later. It started small. A group of workers in the deep tunnels put down their pickaxes and refused to continue. When the overseers came to punish them, they found that another group had stopped too. Then another. Then another. Within an hour, the entire mine was silent. 10,000 Drakari stood in the tunnels and refused to work. They did not fight. They did not run. They simply stopped. Overseer Vexinik rushed to the main cavern, his guards struggling to keep up. He found the workers standing in neat rows, their arms at their sides, their eyes straight ahead. What is the meaning of this? He screamed. Get back to work. All of you. Nobody moved. I will have you all punished. I will activate your collars. Still, nobody moved. Vexinik raised his hand to give the order. But before he could speak, Danny stepped out of the crowd. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Danny said. You. The overseer's eyes bulged with rage. This is your doing. Actually, it's their doing. I just helped them see what was possible. Danny held up his tablet. Right now, this scene is being broadcast to every major news network in the galaxy. Every trading partner the hegemony has is watching. If you hurt these workers, if you activate those collars, everyone will see. I don't care what they see. Maybe you don't, but your bosses will. How much money do you think the hegemony will lose if the entire galaxy sees them torturing peaceful workers? How many trade deals will fall apart? How many allies will start asking uncomfortable questions? Vexinik's hand trembled. Danny could see the calculation happening behind those compound eyes. The overseer was cruel, but he was not stupid. He knew that the humans had trapped him. What do you want? Vexinik asked through clenched mandibles. Sithara stepped forward. Her voice rang out clear and strong, echoing off the stone walls. We want our debts canceled. All of them. We want fair wages for our work. We want the right to leave if we choose. We want our children to grow up free. She spread her wings, the ragged edges still showing where they had been cut. We want to be treated like people, not property. The overseer laughed bitterly. You asked for the impossible. We asked for justice, Sithara replied. And we will not work again until we receive it. The standoff lasted 3 weeks. The hegemony sent negotiators. Then threats. Then more negotiators. The Veliks tried everything they could think of. They cut off food supplies. They turned off the heating systems. They made promises they had no intention of keeping. But the Drakari did not break. They had been hungry before. They had been cold before. They had been lied to before. None of it was new. What was new was the hope. The belief that things could change. That their suffering meant something. That their children might have a better life. In the end, the hegemony gave in. Not because they cared about justice. Because they cared about money. The Voidstone shipments had stopped. The trade partners were getting nervous. The news coverage was making them look bad. It was not a complete victory. The Drakari did not get everything they asked for. But they got enough. The debts were reduced. The wages were raised. The worst abuses were stopped. And most importantly, they proved that the Veliks could be beaten. On the day the agreement was signed, Sithara found Danny in the cargo bay of his ship. He was packing his things. "You're leaving?" she asked. "The work here is done," he said. "At least for now. There are other places that need help." Sithara nodded slowly. She had known this day would come. But that did not make it easier. "Will you return?" "Probably. Someone needs to check on you troublemakers." Danny smiled and held out his hand. "It's been an honor, Sithara." She did not take his hand. Instead, she pulled him into an embrace. Her scales were warm against his skin. Her fire, so long dormant, hummed with quiet power. "You gave us back our future," she whispered. "We will never forget." When she released him, Danny's eyes were wet. He wiped them quickly and cleared his throat. "Take care of those kids," he said, "and keep fighting. This is just the beginning." "I know," Sithara said, "and we will be ready." She watched his ship rise into the sky and vanish among the stars. Then she turned and walked back toward the mines. There was still work to do. But now, for the first time in generations, that work had meaning. The fire was burning again, and it would not go out. 5 years after the strike, the galaxy was a different place. The mines of Kethvara still operated, but they were not the same. The workers received fair wages now. Their children went to schools that humans had helped build. The shock collars were gone, melted down and turned into a monument that stood in the main cavern. The monument was a statue of 2 figures standing side by side. One was a Drakari with spread wings and raised head. The other was a human with his hand extended in friendship. Below them, carved in stone, were words in both languages. "Freedom is not given. It is taken. But sometimes it is shared." Sithara stood before the statue on the 5th anniversary of the strike. She was not the same broken creature who had begged for wages all those years ago. Her scales shone with health. Her wings had grown back, though they would never be as strong as they once were. And her children stood beside her, tall and proud. Korath had become a teacher. He taught young Drakari about history, about their rights, about the power they held in their own claws. Mira was studying law through human educational programs. She wanted to help others the way humans had helped her family. And Fen, no longer little, was training to be a pilot. He dreamed of flying among the stars. "They're coming," Myra said, pointing toward the sky. A ship descended through the clouds. It was larger than the Steady Hand had been, and newer. But the design was familiar. Human. Sithara felt her heart lift. The ship landed in the cleared area near the monument. A door opened and a ramp extended. The first person to walk down was a woman Sithara recognized immediately. Linda Park had more gray in her hair now, but her eyes were just as sharp as ever. She smiled when she saw Sithara and hurried over to embrace her. "Look at you," Linda said. "You look amazing." "You look tired," Sithara replied with a grin. "I am tired. Do you know how hard it is to organize a delegation? Humans are worse than children sometimes." More humans were coming down the ramp. Sithara recognized some of them. Journalists who had covered the strike. Lawyers who had helped with the legal cases. Activists who had pressured the hegemony. And behind them all, walking slowly, was a familiar figure. Danny Cole looked older too. His hair had gone gray at the temples. Lines marked his face that had not been there before. He walked with a slight limp from an injury he had gotten on some other world, fighting some other battle. But his eyes were the same. Warm and kind and stubborn. "Sithara," he said simply. She could not speak. She crossed the distance between them and wrapped her arms around him. He felt small and fragile against her scales. This human who had changed everything. I wasn't sure you would come. She finally managed to say, "Miss this? Are you kidding?" Danny pulled back and looked at her with a crooked smile. "I had to see what you've done with the place." They walked together through the settlement that had grown around the mines. It was a real town now, with houses and shops and public spaces. Drukhari and humans mixed freely in the streets. Children of both species played together, laughing and shouting in a mixture of languages. "This is incredible," Danny said, his voice soft with wonder. "When I left, you were just starting to rebuild. This is a real community." "It took time," Sithara said, "and help. So many humans came after you left. Teachers, doctors, engineers. They asked nothing in return. They just wanted to help. That's what humans do. When we're at our best, anyway." They reached a hilltop overlooking the settlement. From here, they could see the entrance to the mines, the monument, the new buildings spreading across the landscape. In the distance, transport ships rose and fell, carrying voidstone to markets across the galaxy. But now the profits were shared. Now the workers benefited from their own labor. "I heard about what you did on Kepler Station," Sithara said, "and the uprising on the merchant worlds." "You've been busy." Danny shrugged. "There's a lot of suffering in the galaxy. A lot of people who need help. You can't save everyone." "No, but I can try." He turned to face her. "You know, when I paid your debt that first day, I thought I was just helping one family. I never imagined it would lead to all this." "Small acts can have large consequences," Sithara said. "That is something the Veliks never understood. They thought power came from ships and soldiers and money. But real power comes from something else. From connection. From kindness. From refusing to look away when someone is suffering." My mom used to say something like that. Danny's voice grew quiet. "She said the world breaks everyone, and afterward, some are strong at the broken places." She sounds wise. She was. I wish she could have seen this. All of it. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set over the mountains. The sky turned colors that had no names in any language. Somewhere below, a Drukhari child laughed, and a human child laughed with her. "What will you do now?" Sithara asked. "You could stay here. We would welcome you. You could rest." Danny smiled sadly. "I've never been good at resting. There's another situation brewing in the outer reach. A group of refugees that nobody wants to help. I thought I might see what I can do." "Of course you did." Sithara shook her head. "You are a strange creature, Danny Cole. You have no claws, no wings, no fire. By all logic, you should be prey, not hunter. But you have changed the fate of entire species. Not me. We, all of us together." Danny looked out at the settlement below. "Humans have a lot of problems. We fight among ourselves. We make stupid mistakes. Sometimes we're the villains of the story. But we also have this stubborn belief that things can get better. That tomorrow doesn't have to be the same as yesterday. And sometimes, if we're lucky, we can help spread that belief to others. You have certainly spread it here." Sithara placed her hand on his shoulder. "The Drukhari will tell stories about you for generations. The human who saw a dragon mother begging for wages and decided to change the world. All I did was write a check and fill out some paperwork. You did much more than that. You showed us that we mattered. That someone outside our own species could look at us and see people instead of property." Her voice grew thick with emotion. "You gave us back our dignity. You cannot buy that with any amount of money." The delegation stayed for 3 days. There were ceremonies and speeches and celebrations. The Drukhari honored their human friends with feasts and songs and gifts. Old alliances were renewed. New friendships were formed. On the final night, there was a gathering in the great cavern where the strike had begun. Thousands of Drakari filled the space, along with hundreds of humans. The statue gleamed in the lamplight. Sithara stood on the platform and looked out at the crowd. Her children sat in the front row, their faces shining with pride. 5 years ago, she said, I stood in this place as a slave. I had no hope, no future. I was ready to give up. And then a human did something remarkable. He looked at me and saw not a worker, not a tool, not a number. He saw a mother, and he decided to help. She found Danny's face in the crowd. He looked uncomfortable with the attention, as he always did. We cannot repay what humanity has given us, Sithara continued. Not with money, not with resources, not with any material thing. But we can repay it in another way. We can pass it on. She raised her hand, and the lights in the cavern dimmed. On the walls, images began to appear. Ships, workers, suffering faces. There are others in this galaxy who need help, Sithara said. Other species crushed under the hegemony's boot. Other families begging for wages that will never come. Other children going hungry while the powerful grow fat. Her voice rose. We were saved by kindness. Now it is our turn to share that kindness with others. The crowd erupted in cheers. Drakari voices roared like thunder. Human voices joined them, adding their own noise to the chorus. Danny felt tears running down his face. He did not try to hide them. Later that night, as the celebration wound down, he found Sithara near the entrance to the mines. She was staring up at the stars. That was quite a speech, he said. I meant every word. She turned to face him. We are sending ships to the outer reach, to help with your refugees, and to other places after that. The Drakari will not rest while others suffer as we did. You know it won't be easy. The hegemony won't like it. There will be resistance. Let them resist. Sithra's eyes blazed with ancient fire. We have remembered who we are. We are Drakari. We do not back down. Danny laughed. It was a good sound, full of warmth and joy. You know, I think you're going to be okay. We are going to be more than okay, Sithara said. We are going to change the galaxy. One act of kindness at a time. Just like you showed us. She extended her clawed hand. Danny took it without hesitation. Partners? She asked. Partners, he agreed. Above them, the stars burned with possibility. Somewhere out there, other slaves were waiting to be freed. Other fires were waiting to be rekindled. Other mothers were begging for wages that would never come. But now they were not alone. Now they had friends, and sometimes that made all the difference. In the years that followed, the alliance between humans and Drakari grew stronger. They traveled together to distant worlds. They fought together against injustice. They taught other species what they had learned, that the chains which bind us are only as strong as our belief in them. Danny Cole never stopped wandering. He grew old on dozens of different planets, always moving toward the next person who needed help. When he finally passed away, at the age of 90,